Right now we are heading straight into the interview segment, and that particular story will form part of the discussion that we're having tonight, considering the fact that Wednesdays and Saturdays, we know very well now that Kenyans will be walking into town. We tried it once. There was a lot of uproar, but the Nairobi County government decided to allow Kenyans operate in the way they normally do. And tonight in studio, I am joined by Mr. Joseph Ndung'u. He's the director, Kenya Institute of Security and Criminal Justice. Thank you very much for joining us. So many Kenyans are concerned about their security because the distance from where they will be dropped into the CBD, some will be walking for close to 2 kilometers. How does the government convince people that they're going to be safe, considering that Nairobi is not new to muggings?
Thank you for calling me in. Let me start by saying that the question of security has to be factored, especially when we begin to introduce mass transit systems like the one that has been promised by the Minister for Transport. Because in some countries, it has become a target of terrorism, especially when you begin to move people in large numbers on a transport system. That becomes an easy target. And in some countries, that has been a soft target for terrorists. Again, on the issue of having hawkers in town, while the explanation is plausible and there seems to be an economic sense, but again, the question of security has to be factored, because when you look at how Boko Haram has been operating in Nigeria, Boko Haram activists have been focusing on crowded areas where people are doing business and totally oblivious of what is happening around them, especially when you have suicide bombers who volunteer, whether they are women, children, or boys or men, who walk into a crowded area where people are doing their business and blow themselves up. That is something that the security operators have to think about very carefully, because again, this being a vulnerable area because of Al-Shabaab, that again can become a soft target. Look at even how people are expected to be moving from some designated parking areas, where again, we've not been told how all those people who have private cars, who have parking in buildings where they work, who park in basements, how they will handle that, because it seems like a blanket ban on vehicles into CBD. Yet there are those who come in their vehicles, go to the parking lots on the basement of their buildings, and the vehicles remain there for the better part of the day. That has not been explained. So the security alertness or level of security alertness required will definitely be very high, and this has to be thought out and explained actively by the authorities. And again, active police presence may be required on those days in the streets, or sometimes the presence of police officers, especially the uniformed police officers, can be a deterrence. All these are things that have to be really factored into all this planning.
All right. And which one is more effective, having uniformed security officers in the streets or having undercover security officers in the streets?
I would argue for both, but there is an advantage of having more uniformed police officers, because the mere presence of the police officers in the streets is a clear indicator that security has been taken care of. And your average criminal, your average member of the public does not like to confront the police for no reason. And again, it restores confidence among the members of the public that, yes, we can see uniformed officers, yes, our security has been thought about. But on the other hand, you need undercover officers who may be on surveillance or duties, who may pick things that members of the public may be doing or discussing in some corner that the uniformed staff may not pick. And where there is a combined force between the uniformed staff and the undercover officers, the level of security tends to be very high.
All right.
Yeah.
Over the years, Kenya has seen so many attacks from the Somali-based terror group. Of course, the government coming out to say that the country is safe and it is dealing with this, this terror element.
Yeah.
But there is that role that the public also needs to play, because there is that attraction when something happens, Kenyans want to go there. And in so many cases, you find that, for example, there is a blast, and then there is another blast shortly after. So how do Kenyans approach such instances?
One of the challenges that we have, because I wouldn't like to call it a problem, one of the challenges we have as a country, we have very little community training on how to respond to situations like those one. You find in some countries there is a community approach to security which ensures that the members of the public in different areas of residences are trained on how to handle security situations. That, to the best of my knowledge, happens on a very limited level. And in some communities, it doesn't happen at all. That's why you'll see in Nairobi, even when you see some suspicious luggage that could be an explosive waiting to be blown, Kenyans will be quickly attracted there because they've not been educated on the dangers of such items. And the level of security alertness among our members of the public is extremely poor. And just look at an example of a shootout. Several of us ran to the side where the shots are coming from, which again would show our level of ignorance, our lack of appreciation of the danger that the shots could stray into your direction. And again, this boils down to lack of community preparedness on such insecurity or such situations where the loss of life is possible. And again, you see, for example, when you talk of active shooters, like it happened at the hotel the other day, very little public training in various communities has taken place, even among the facilities in town. Facility managers or owners of those buildings, very few have emergency plans on how to deal with active shooters. And many places this training has not happened, be it in churches, be it in any public places where people gather. This training has not happened.
So we have seen fire drills so many times, but we haven't actually seen a drill where there are actors who are probably, you know, holding props and guns, I mean, and this, they go into buildings, and the occupants are told that this is what you need to do in case of such an attack. Is that extreme for us?
You see, even with fire drills, they're very few and far apart. Yeah, because most buildings in town, if you raise an alarm and shout fire, nobody will believe there is fire until they see one burning. And certainly they will not run away. And even those who run will run to the direction of the building to go and see for themselves. Not knowing that depending on the type of fire, they could easily become victims. Now, when you come to security situations like those, where the lives of the very people who are going to witness is at risk, knowing that people run towards shooting incidents, shooting situations in Nairobi, then that would tell you that this lack of preparedness puts us at a very vulnerable position. And for example, with active shooting situation, you see, if people are trained on how to handle them, for example, if there is an incident of active shooting, can you evacuate from the scene? But before you do, evaluate the situation, know where the active shooter is coming from, or where the shots are coming from, and evaluate the situation, whether it is safe for you to remain there or to run. If you can run, then you run. If you cannot run, you stay where you are and barricade the place. You see, this theoretically would seem to work, but unless people have been taken through training, that let's plan a drill on active shooting, for example, in Nyayo House. And don't tell the members of the public or those who occupy the building that there will be a drill. Let's see how they handle it. Then what lessons do we pick from that? Then can we train people in such a building on how to respond to a situation like that? How do they evaluate the shooting situation? If they will not run away and they decide to hide, don't hide at a place where the active shooter will find you. Barricade the office using chairs, using anything that can block entry, and then wait from the barricaded room. So you don't just tell people to hide under tables or inside the wardrobes, because active shooters know and have attended these classes. They know where people will be hiding because they've also been trained in some of these methods. But you see, when you barricade a room and they know the room has a barricade, then without knowledge of how many people are in such a room, it would frustrate their effort. And again, that increases the response time of the law enforcement officials. Right. So again, this can only happen if drills have been done.
Okay.
Very few drills, even in public facilities, have taken place.
There was so much uproar in the manner in which the Kenyan media or the international media responded to the Riverside attack. For the Kenyan media, I know that terrorist elements always want to see how a country reacts. What role should the media play? And in terms of security, what images should the media show in case of such an attack?
The first thing the media should recognize, and I'm sure they do, is that every terrorist attack is a publicity time for the terrorist group. And they would like as many people to know worldwide. They would like to attract as many journalists as possible. And so they are keen on what reports will be made, how reports will be carried out, and all these kind of things. So when journalists report on such a scene, one of the things that you would expect as a Kenyan is to remember the security, national security is a priority, and don't give the terrorists publicity. And you see, even though we may not call it a terrorist attack initially, all the indicators of such an attack are usually in the air. And the best thing to do is not to give the group, for example, Al-Shabaab in our case, the publicity they desire by reporting even the members of the public hiding. Because I saw some journalists were showing where the members of the public were hiding, how the police formations were moving. Yes, it was limited for some media houses, but still when I compare with what happens in the West, for example, in UK or France, journalists there do not expose reporting that tells the terrorists what police operations are going on. Because when you show the image of a police formation moving into the scene, you're actually feeding into the terrorists, planning on how to respond. Sometimes they'll get to know that this number of police officers have come because they can see them on television. They are monitoring on their mobile phones. There is always a command center somewhere where some terrorists are monitoring what is going on and communicating directly with those at the scene. And so journalists should be careful on what photographs they show. Even showing horrified members of the public running away have a psychological effect on very many people. Okay. And that should be factored. And when you look at the guidelines for journalists on reporting of terrorism, all these guidelines are there. And they've been articulated very well by the Media Council. But the question of wanting to appear with the breaking news, and you are the only television station that has these images.
There's always that competition.
That balance needs to be handled carefully, so that we do not help the terrorists to achieve, and also to minimize the psychological effect of the incident among the population.
Okay.
And I'm sure our journalists are well guided on this, but there is always a temptation to get something that, a coverage that the other news houses do not have.
All right.
Yeah.
And finally, I know that every incident is a learning process.
Yeah.
And from Westgate, the Kenyan government has been praised for the kind of response that it made during the Riverside attack.
Yeah.
What sort of lessons do you think was learned during the Riverside attack that probably will equip the government more in terms of dealing with such kind of events?
I would like to, first of all, to tie in with the lessons learned from Westgate, the need of, the importance of a coordinated action, which was excellent this time. The response among our security agents was excellent, and you could clearly see there were lessons learned from Westgate, and how they handled this particular case, especially isolating the terrorists and getting to know very quickly where they were. And as they isolate them, efforts were made by the security agents to evacuate members of the public and get them out of the trouble scene. And that helped to a very large extent in minimizing the casualties. Again, one of the lessons that we learned from this is how to calm the public even as you evacuate them. But you see, again, for that to work, some drills need to have happened. Some drills need to have been carried out. So again, a lesson for us, let's be more active on the side of drills. Again, coordinate drills with the law enforcement agencies so that when it happens like it did, then the members of the public have some level of awareness on how to cooperate with the security agencies on the ground. And again, the importance of allowing the elite forces to do their work. This time, the Wrecking Squad was given the space. Westgate experience was a disaster. They were never allowed to do that which they are trained for, I mean to do. And you know, our Wrecking Squad is one of the best trained elite forces in the region, and trained by the best among the Israelis, the British, and the Americans. And when they are given the space to do and to handle an emergency operation like that one, they've come out very well. So again, in terms of what we learn, the importance of cooperating and working alongside our security agencies for our security.
All right.
Yeah.
Joseph Ndung'u.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for calling me in.
You're always welcome.
Thank you.